The other key indexes all closed higher. The FBI is investigating former MGM Pathé studio owner Giancarlo Peretti, that according to the Los Angeles Times. Peretti is suspected of defrauding the studio's new management, Credit Lyonnais. Peretti allegedly shifted MGM's cash and assets to other companies under his control. Peretti borrowed from Credit Lyonnais to purchase MGM 2 years ago for $1.3 billion. The bank took control of the studio after Peretti defaulted on that loan. And that's the latest in business news. I'm Terry Keenan reporting live from the New York Stock Exchange. Tonight on Moneyline with Lou Dobbs, we'll have an interview with Chrysler's Lee Iacocca, now heading into his final quarter as the head of the nation's #3 automaker. Inside Politics is coming up next on CNN.
George Bush winds up a whistle-stop train tour of 3 southern states, saying he feels confident.
Bill Clinton kicks off a 3-day tour in the West, saying he's not laid back or getting comfortable.
Ross Perot's people plot strategy in Dallas. Most of what he's saying, he's paying to put on TV. It's all part of Inside Politics 92.
This is Inside Politics 92 with Catherine Crier at the CNN Center in Atlanta and Bernard Shaw in Washington.
Thanks for joining us. He's running a double-digit deficit in most polls and has less than 2 weeks till Election Day. But George Bush still claims he's going to win 4 more years. The president talked with our senior White House correspondent Charles Bierbauer earlier today as he tried to keep his campaign on track in North Carolina.
President Bush is counting more on those friendly voters' track side than the confounding voters the pollsters track.
I mean, I just don't think people trust the polls anymore. They're up and down, and, you know, change in a week. So my view is forget the polls, get out where the people are, and get the job done.
Bush says his campaign's own polling is not as gloomy.
Yes, they're substantially better, especially since this debate. So
the president campaigned a second day by rail in North Carolina.
Thanks. Looking good. How you guys?
After a hearty waffle breakfast. Waffling is a staple of Bush's criticism of Clinton, an accusation the governor has no constant positions.
We had breakfast at the Waffle House today. A little symbolism. Very good breakfast, I might add, but there was a message in that. I don't think the American people want a president who's going to try to be all things to all people.
The president's message is that Clinton is both unqualified and untrustworthy. Bush also repeatedly tells voters not to trust the press.
You know my favorite bumper sticker? Annoy the media. Re-elect President Bush. They don't like it. They don't like it a bit.
What message is it that's not getting through?
Well, I don't know. We're going to wait and see. I think the message is getting through. But I think there's a lot of filters when you get into the national media.
The president's enthusiasm remains unflaggingly high, despite the fact North Carolina should already be locked in the Republican column.
We're going to win the election, Charles. We can't go walk you through state by state. Leave that to the analysts. Go talk to the political handler. I'm the president.
Governor Jim Martin says his state's voters need to be reminded that they are by nature conservative, and the Clinton-Gore ticket is not.
But if our people sit on their hands and say there's no point in going because the advocacy polls tell us we're going to lose and therefore don't go, then you do lose.
There are Republicans who suggest that short of a miracle, Bush cannot win.
And nobody's told you it's over.
Not anybody I trust.
Thank you, sir.
Not anyone I trust.
President Bush has begun anew to recall Harry Truman, who made quite a comeback in 1948 when the polls said he could not win. But Truman then was not as far behind as Bush still seems to be now. Charles Bierbauer, CNN, Thomasville, North Carolina.
And while the president is trying to shore up his political base, Bill Clinton is in the West trying to expand his. And as CNN's Gene Randall reports, the confident governor appears to be in search of a mandate to govern.
With less than 2 weeks before the election, Bill Clinton is staging a foray into areas Democratic presidential candidates have long considered alien territory. Clinton says the trip west is aimed at showing he is a different kind of Democrat.
We understand that some of these things that have to be done require personal responsibility, personal responsibility. In our programs, we're going to move people from welfare to work like we have at home. Tell people we're going to spend more money on your education, your training, your support for your children, but when you can go to work, you got to go to work.
Clinton is also still on the attack. Target George Bush.
In that debate the other night, Mr. Bush reminded me of Lucy in that cartoon strip Peanuts, where she said, if you can't be right, be wrong as loud as you can.
Clinton insists there is a hard fight in the 2 weeks ahead and that he is not laid back or comfortable because of his lead in the polls.
There are some people who say that this election is over. They are dead wrong.
High on Clinton's agenda these days, trying to shatter President Bush's repeated charge, Clinton would end up raising taxes on the middle class to pay for his programs. Clinton insists he would instead cut other spending, though he will not say where.
I'm not going to get into hypotheticals. I just try to make the point that I have no intention of doing what the Republicans are charging. I have no intention of raising taxes on the middle class to pay for these programs.
Bill Clinton downplays the notion that an election mandate would be based on a big percentage victory in November. Still, the fact is this campaign swing takes him through 7 western states. In many of those states, Democratic presidential victories since the 1960s have been as rare as two-headed rattlesnakes. An election triumph in November that included some of those states could be seen as a strong argument that Bill Clinton had indeed demonstrated nationwide campaign appeal. Gene Randall, CNN, Pueblo, Colorado.
Once again, Ross Perot is keeping his supporters waiting. Despite calls for him to hit the hustings, there's no clear sign Perot is planning to appear anywhere except on TV. From Dallas, here's CNN's Tony Clark.
Ross Perot has not yet decided whether he'll do any personal campaigning. Aides say they hope he will, but nothing's been decided.
Perhaps some rallies, perhaps some visits to particularly industry facilities, town halls. There's a wide number of things we're considering.
But the we is only the staff. With a week and a half left before Election Day, the only thing that is firm is a TV blitz.
Same doctors and the same medical attention.
Perot has bought 3 half-hour blocks of network time for Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. But aides are only discussing the content of the first one. It will be Perot talking about his life and achievements.
There's never any question if something happened to you, who would take care of your family? We were a family.
Because of Perot's solid performance in the presidential debates and his higher favorability rating, the challenge facing the independent candidate is convincing voters he has a chance to win. It's a message that is stressed in his new 60-second commercials.
This is no time to waste our votes on politics as usual. It is time for a candidate who will get down to business. It is time for Ross Perot.
I think that Bush's support, if it's not at its core level, it's awfully close. But I think that you've seen Bush continue to go down, and I think he can go down further. We think Clinton's support is soft.
Dallas, Texas.
Perot supporters say since the debate, their phone banks have been flooded with calls. And aides say the volunteers are back in full force, and the next 2 weeks will be full of surprises. Tony Clark, CNN, Dallas.
Well, we've all heard it ain't over till it's over, but is it? Up next on Inside Politics 92, can Bush still win? And if so, what does he have to do to turn things around? And later in this half hour, Pennsylvania's high-profile Senate race. Will Yankel ride the tide of change, or will Specter buck the Bootham mentality?
Inside Politics 92, brought to you by Intel, the computer inside, giving you affordable power with the Intel 486 microprocessor.
This symbol outside means you have the standard inside that an entire library of software has been written to. The Intel microprocessor. Think of it as a library card that lets you run the software of today and tomorrow. So check out computers with Intel, the computer inside.
Can't believe he broke it at the company picnic.
Incredible. Our employee health plan covers him, right?
Not deductibles or co-payments.
So he has to lay out his own money.
Gaps in your health plan can be costly. Aflac can help. Aflac is a leader in supplemental insurance with 35 years of dependable service. Today, employees of over 80,000 companies count on Aflac for the peace of mind to get on with life.
Any ideas?
Yeah, Aflac.
Aflac, insuring over 35 million people worldwide.
If water leaking through masonry walls is a problem in and around your home, here's a paint that's guaranteed to stop water completely. Dry Lock. Brush it on right from the can to inside and outside walls or wherever masonry and water meet. Dry Lock, the #1 rated waterproofer, absolutely stops water. You might even say that the water-stopping powers of Dry Lock are almost miraculous. Look for Dry Lock products wherever quality paints are sold.
Tax less, spend less.
Create an investment economy.
Put our people back to work.
How do the candidates stand issue by issue? A 1-hour special report reveals the final exam, Sunday, November 1st on CNN. Brought to you by Chrysler Plymouth.
Our daily CNN USA Today Gallup tracking poll shows some narrowing in Bill Clinton's lead. Clinton drops 2 points from yesterday to 45%. Bush gains 3 points to 32%, and Ross Perot holds at 15%. 1/3 of the registered voters surveyed were questioned after Monday's presidential debate.
George Bush insists he's going to win, despite the numbers in what he calls those crazy polls. What would it take for that to happen, if it can happen at all? Well, let's ask our public opinion expert, Bill Schneider, who joins us here in Washington. Is it mathematically possible for Bush to win this?
Well, Bernie, let's look at where President Bush stands today in our tracking poll. As of today, 21% of the voters call themselves, or what we call core Bush voters. They say they will vote, there is no chance they will vote for either of the other two candidates. Now, 11% are soft Bush voters. They are voting for George Bush now, but they say they might change their minds. Those two categories add up to 32%. That's Bush's total vote as of today in our poll. Now, there's an additional 18% we call potential Bush voters. Those are people who are not now voting for Bush, but say there's a chance they'll change their mind and end up supporting the president. Finally, 50% of registered voters tell us there is no chance whatsoever they will vote for Bush. So half the electorate is unavailable to the president. That's the bad news for the president. The good news is that it is theoretically possible for Bush to get as much as 50% of the vote. That's enough to win, especially in a three-way race where you can win with less than a majority. Now let's look at more closely at the 18% who we call potential Bush supporters. How can the president get them? The president's best bet is to win over the 1/3 of those potential Bush supporters who are now voting for Ross Perot. 2/3 of those Perot supporters who might vote for Bush say they like Bush. Only 14% like Clinton. But it really is a problem for Bush to get them. He has to raid the Perot vote. But at the same time, the president has to make sure that Perot remains a viable option, because Bush still needs Perot to split the anti-Bush vote with Clinton. Another problem for the president: if he got all the Perot voters and all the undecided voters who are potential Bush supporters, that would put the president up to 44%. Now, that's still 1 point behind Bill Clinton. He'd still lose narrowly to Clinton. Bush can't just raid the Perot voters and the undecided voters. He has to get at least a few votes from the people who are now voting for Bill Clinton.
Well, can Bush do that politically?
Well, let's see what issues Bush can use to win over those potential Bush voters who are not with him now. We asked them the same question Bush asked at the end of the second debate last week. If there were a major national or international crisis, which candidate would you choose to handle it? 2/3 said Bush. A major world crisis would certainly do the job, but it would have to be a crisis that Bush didn't cause. Suppose Boris Yeltsin were suddenly overthrown as president of Russia and replaced by a hardliner. A crisis like that would suddenly raise fears about a new Cold War, and that would almost certainly get Bush a lot of votes. Bush is unlikely to win many of those potential supporters over on the economy. They rate Bush the worst of all three candidates for handling the economy. He's got to get them to think of some other issues. So the answer is, it's a tough thing for Bush to do politically.
Well, has a turnaround of this magnitude ever happened before?
Let's look at some of the historic examples of races that changed. Now remember, Bush is now 13 points behind Bill Clinton. In 1976, Jimmy Carter had a 33-point lead over Gerald Ford in July, according to the Gallup poll. Carter ended up winning by just 2 points. But Ford started to gain much earlier than now. By mid-October, Ford was just 6 points behind. In 1980, Carter was leading Ronald Reagan for most of the fall campaign. That race turned around in the last week and Reagan won. But in mid-October, Reagan was just 4 points behind. Bush likes to compare himself to Harry Truman, who pulled off an upset in the 1948 race. But the mid-October Gallup polls showed Truman just 5 points behind. None of them were as far behind as Bush is now. Bernie, Republicans also like to use the example of John Major in Britain this year. Major won the British election in April, even though all the polls predicted he would lose. But Major was never more than 7 points behind in any of the pre-election polls. So he, too, was not in as much trouble as George Bush. I would say it's mathematically possible for Bush to win this election, but it's politically improbable and historically unprecedented.
Bill Schneider, thank you. Catherine?
Well, up next on Inside Politics, the ins and outs of the expected changes on Capitol Hill. How big will those changes really be?
Welcome to Hotel Views, business clubs, Holiday Inn or Ramada. Bob?
Susan, you boardroom bow wow. Holiday Inn has a business club. It's got bonus points, your gifts, everything. Wake up, Susan. Smell the coffee.
I smell something, Bob, and it's not French roast. Look, Ramada's business card program has all that and more. At Ramada, you can earn bonus points faster toward over 10,000 gifts. Plus, your spouse stays free. Tell us, Bob, when did your brain check out? Face it, Ramada's in, holidays out.
Do you have what it takes to make money on Wall Street? For more than 2 decades, I've been helping people cut through the jargon and get to the green. Now you can gain even further insights on investment opportunities from the best experts I know. With this, Louis Rukeyser's Wall Street, edited by yours truly. Each month we talk with the true titans of Wall Street, and each month they become your personal financial counselors, bringing you honest, impartial, practical advice on how to invest and how to get a better handle on all your finances to build a better life. Unparalleled information and guidance from people who move and shape the world of money.
Call now for your charter subscription to Louis Rukeyser's Wall Street. Get 12 monthly issues for only $39.50, almost half off the regular subscription price. Plus, with this special charter offer, you'll also receive the valuable premier issue with top experts' best recommendations for the next 6 months. And Louis Rukeyser's Investing Strategies Guide, absolutely free.
Make a shrewd investment. Subscribe to my newsletter. Read it and reap.
Call 1-800-238-2800. Gain from Mr. Rukeyser's unrivaled contacts, expertise, and insights as he speaks his mind off camera, telling it like it is. And if by chance you're not completely satisfied, we'll gladly refund your money. So call now, 1-800-238-2800.
We've heard it over and over again. Change is the battle cry of candidates this year. Now, there are expected to be a lot of changes on Capitol Hill after Election Day, but what kind and why? CNN Special Assignment Correspondent Ken Bodie gives us some hints.
Great, thanks a lot. Have a nice day. Take care, bye-bye.
Henry Butler, Virginia Republican, gives new meaning to the phrase running for office.
I'm Henry Butler. Nice to meet you. I'm running for Congress in this new 11th district.
Butler is in a new district, open seat, running for Congress full steam with a full team of young helpers by running against Congress.
I consider myself a reformer. We need to make some massive changes in the way we've been running government.
It's more startling that Virginia's never had a woman.
His Democratic opponent, Leslie Byrne, here at a neighborhood chili contest, is also running as an outsider.
If you vote for me and don't vote for my chili, that's all right, too. Right.
It is a year of anti-incumbent, anti-Congress sentiment, both on the stump and on television.
Time Washington woke up. The world's changed, and we need leaders who can change with it.
Leslie Byrne.
Before the polls even open, we know that dozens of familiar faces won't be back. Retirements, scandal, primary defeats.
I think we're likely to have about 135 or 140 new House members, and that's a large percentage out of 435.
By all accounts, we're looking at a huge turnover, much larger than the last major change in the House,
following the Watergate scandal of 1974. That year, 92 new members came to Washington, the vast majority of them reform-minded Democrats. They wanted to make the House more democratic, small d, but many believe that the reforms they implemented made Congress more difficult to lead and contributed to the gridlock government that bothers voters today. A farmer's market in central Pennsylvania.
This is my third market today because I was in 2 in York early this morning.
You are looking at an endangered species, Republican Bill Goodling, an 8-term incumbent, part of that famous Watergate class.
How are you?
Nice meeting you.
Good to see you.
He also has one of the highest numbers of total overdrafts at the House Bank, 430 of what his opponents are calling bounce checks. 15 of the 22 worst offenders are already gone.
Congressman Bill Goodling has grown so used to special privileges
Goodling's
in Washington.
opponents are using the check bouncing theme in their TV ads.
Then Goodling admitted to bouncing just one. But investigators revealed Goodling bounced 430 checks for $180,000 in interest-free loans.
Goodling's opponents understand the public mood.
It has, if nothing else, I think, leveled out the field so that myself and the other challenger are now being heard.
He was listed as one of the top 22 check bouncers, and that's an embarrassment to this district. It's just plain wrong.
Well, how are you?
To many voters, the House Bank is symbolic of all that's wrong with Congress.
I say that it was a perk that the majority party allowed. I wish I had never participated in taking part in that perk, but I did.
Congressional perks like free car washes and cheap haircuts and low-cost health insurance will be a target in the new Congress. But there will be more serious reforms as well, particularly of campaign finance.
If that is not done, there will be no successful reform agenda. If the way money flows in Washington in the campaign process is not fundamentally changed, forget it.
Hi, Leslie Burns. Oh, good to see you.
There are more competitive House races this year than any time in recent memory. More nervous incumbents. And among challengers, a universal anti-Washington, anti-Congress, anti-incumbent theme. Listen.
You're not an incumbent. Never run for anything before. Okay, then you get my vote. All right, great. Y'all get that?
Ken Bodie, CNN Special Assignment.
1 year ago this month, Republican Senator Arlen Specter of Pennsylvania angered many people with his tough questioning in the cross-examination periods of law professor Anita Hill. Now he faces a tough challenge from one of those people, Lynn Yackel. CNN's Candy Crowley continues our look at some of the key Senate races around the country.
Republican Senator Arlen Specter has passed this way before, through Pennsylvania's farm regions, past her coal mines and her cities. And along the way, Specter, a master politician, has made a lot of friends on both sides of the road.
I see a lot of Clinton Gore buttons on, and I understand that. And I see a lot of Arlen Specter symbols right next to them, and I'm very proud to see that.
You've been a friend to the United Mine Workers. You've been a friend to labor. You never forgot us. Come this election, we're not going to forget you.
Coraopolis, Pennsylvania is a long way from the mainline suburbs of Philadelphia, where Democrat Lynn Yackel has spent most of her adult life.
Hi, how are you?
Doing?
A political neophyte who has never run for public office, Yackel has made a lot of new friends in her pursuit of Specter's job.
I'll stand up for you when I get there, but you need to stand up for me now to get me there, so.
We will.
It's great.
I'll tell you one thing. We of the Yackel will make it. Because it's by the time we need to change, and we need to change all around, from state to local to Washington.
Arlen Specter spends a lot of time before women's groups these days, trailing 2-1 among female voters. He is generally the one to bring up his role in the Anita Hill, Clarence Thomas hearings.
But whatever anybody may think about the questioning of Professor Hill, no one can deny that there's not anyone in the United States Senate who has a better record on women's issues than I do.
one of our oldest and best.
Though Specter's questioning of Hill prompted Yeakel to go after his job, she has tried to move her campaign beyond that.
The issue is not and never was Anita Hill. The issue is Capitol Hill and the need for new leadership and change on Capitol Hill.
Afternoon, how are you?
And clearly, Specter is swimming upstream against an anti-incumbent tide, but he counters by wearing his 12 years in the Senate proudly.
If I'm not in the United States Senate next year, Pennsylvania will rank 50th in seniority among the 50 states. Now, that is a very, very important item.
But Yeakel insists in Washington, the power is in the party.
Majority in the Senate is much more important than seniority, and I think that Arlen Specter has no clout in the Senate. I mean, that's just a fact.
Arlen Specter is in the toughest battle of his political life, but hangs on to a small lead as October moves toward November.
The Yeakel campaign hopes this season of change in Pennsylvania will bring with it a political change from the ballot box. But Arlen Specter, once seen as the most vulnerable target in the wake of the Anita Hill furor, has proven himself the hardest one to hit. Candy Crowley, CNN, Allegheny County, Pennsylvania.
Kennedy, the legend.
I suppose really the only two dates that most people remember where they were was Pearl Harbor and the death of President Franklin Roosevelt.
Kennedy, the leader.
I support strongly the Constitution. I support strongly the separation of church and state. I believe it's the best arrangement for our society, that I shall continue my devotion to the Constitution and support of it.
Kennedy, the man.
Well, I attended Harvard. I just finished there this June. I'm interested more or less in working sometime in my life for the government, but I haven't really decided as yet.
Time magazine proudly presents what must be considered one of the most comprehensive videos ever produced on the private life of John Fitzgerald Kennedy. This is his story, told in his own words and pictured in film clips, many never before seen by the public, taken from the archives of the Kennedy Library. In addition to these rare moments of film, Time magazine has searched its own picture archives to bring you the most complete picture story of Kennedy's life ever told. And now this collector's video can be yours, free, with your paid subscription to Time magazine. Time lets you focus on major events, politics, the arts, and social issues. If it's important to you, you'll find it in Time. Call now and you can get 25 issues of Time magazine for 3 installments of $9.89 each. That's almost 60% off the cover price. And we'll include this Kennedy video for free. Call now and you'll get even more. 30 years of history-making photos, a chronicle of the 60s, 70s, and 80s as our special thank you for acting promptly. So call right now and get great savings on Time magazine, the remarkable Kennedy video, and the extraordinary book, 30 years of history-making photos, free. Call now.
That wraps up this edition of Inside Politics 92. I'm Catherine Crier in Atlanta.
I'm Bernard Shaw in Washington. Thanks for watching.
Coming up, Early Prime continues, followed by Showbiz Today, after a word from your local cable systems, next on CNN.
Money's always been tight. Jenny managed well with what we had. I couldn't even afford a diamond when we got married. She said she didn't mind. Had some pretty rough times. I never would have made it without her. I just wanted to remind her.
This year, tell her you'd marry her all over again. The Diamond Anniversary Band.
Got a second? Let's talk about my Chevy Lumina. No, I'm not a famous actress. I'm just an average Iowan like you. So you can relate when I say safety is important, especially when the kids are along. Lumina's anti-lock brakes really convinced us. They say you can't put a price on the important things like safety. Believe me, this little number is worth it.
The Chevy Sticker Police are on patrol. That means Lumina's sticker price is unchanged from last year. See your Central Iowa Chevy Geo dealer today. TCI Cablevision and the Disney Channel invite you on a daring chase.
England, 1832, a cold and dangerous place.
Ravenous wolves have overrun the country and now surround the manor of Willoughby Chase.
A sinister governess commands the wolves of Willoughby Chase. Can the children save themselves?
The Wolves of Willoughby Chase, only on the Disney Channel, October 17th and 24th on TCI Cablevision. They call Africa the Dark Continent, a land of extremes, mysterious, threatening, wild. The Family Channel presents African Skies, a new series that takes you to a place where the corporate world meets tribal customs. Can a single mom juggle the responsibilities of corporate life, ecological sensitivity, and jungle fever? Find out on African Skies, Sunday, October 11th at 7, 8 Pacific on the Family Channel and TCI Cablevision.
This is CNN.
Jim Garrison, subject of the movie JFK, and the only man to bring the assassination conspiracy theory to trial, is dead.
The presidential race starts living up to its name. It's become a non-stop dash to Election Day, rich in symbolism, long in rhetoric.
And mounting losses are about to ground scores of Delta Airlines pilots, victims of mass layoffs for the first time since 1950s.
And Early Prime continues. I'm Lou Waters.
And I'm Sharyl Attkisson. Here's what's happening. Jim Garrison, his beliefs inspired the movie JFK. It was a film that rekindled the debate over the assassination of President Kennedy. Jim Garrison died today at home of natural causes. He was the former New Orleans district attorney who believed Kennedy was the victim of a CIA plot and a government cover-up. His theory led to a nationally publicized trial in which New Orleans businessman Clay Shaw was acquitted. Garrison served 12 years as New Orleans DA, another 12 as a state circuit court judge. He never stopped believing CIA hardliners had Kennedy killed to keep the U.S. in Vietnam. Jim Garrison was 70.
The U.S. abandoned its role as neutral observer on a key issue at the latest round of Middle East peace talks, which began this morning in Washington. Siding with Israel, the State Department asked Palestinians not to push for an immediate commitment from Israel on withdrawing from the occupied territories. The U.S. argues the matter should be discussed during the final stages of negotiations for Palestinian autonomy. The Land for Peace dispute slowed negotiations during the last round of peace talks. Muslim fundamentalists in Egypt reportedly killed a British tourist and injured 2 others today during an ambush attack. The tourist minibus was traveling through southern Egypt when 2 gunmen jumped into the road and opened fire with automatic weapons. Attacks on vacationers in Egypt have increased in recent months, but officials say this is the first time Muslim fundamentalists have killed a tourist. Security officials are searching for the gunman. They've also imposed a curfew on the area, the scene of several recent clashes between Muslim fundamentalists and police.
Weapons expert David Kay says President Bush is wrong about U.S. involvement in Iraq's nuclear program. Kay led 3 UN weapons inspections in Iraq. During Monday's debate, the president said there is no evidence Iraq's nuclear know-how came with the help of U.S. technology. But Kay says much of Iraq's nuclear program was built with the help of the U.S. and its allies.
There were U.S. companies supplied one way or the other a large number of computers that were used in the Iraqi programs. These were vital to the program. I must add, and it's not unusual, that computers today that you and I can buy on the street are far more powerful than scientists had available to them even in the mid-50s. So the technology was there. But there again, technology was transferred, equipment was used, but the U.S. was not the major element in that program. That's certainly true.
The State Department acknowledged today that U.S. technology did find its way into Iraq's nuclear arsenal, probably through illegal means. But it says the technology involved did not give Iraq a significant military advantage. President Bush is trying to give his re-election campaign a new head of steam. Bush's whistle-stop train tour roared into North Carolina today. He promised crowds that he won't give up the Oval Office without a fight. He blamed the country's economic woes on an international slowdown, not his administration. He also said putting Bill Clinton in the White House would be like having a Little League coach manage the Atlanta Braves. And he ridiculed Clinton's economic plan.
He says he's the candidate of change. Well, let's take a close look at what he offers. How about this one for openers? And he hadn't got there. $150 billion in new taxes and $220 billion in new spending. That is trickle-down government, and we don't need it in Washington, D.C. He says he'd take it to the socket to the rich. Watch out, middle America. Watch out, struggling nurse or family person. He's going to stick it right in your wallet, and you don't need that anymore.
There's disappointing news for the president from his summer home in Kennebunkport, Maine. The local newspaper, the York County Coast-Star, has endorsed Clinton.
13 days until Election Day, and though polls show him way ahead of President Bush, Bill Clinton is not letting up. Today, Clinton began a two-day tour of Republican strongholds in the West. The Arkansas governor says he's simply working very hard because he doesn't think he's a shoo-in. In Colorado today, he was promising a different sort of government.
We've tried to bring this country a new Democratic Party, one that believes in private sector economic growth, in reasonable and businesslike handling of government that works, in keeping spending and taxes under control, and investing in education, and in solving problems, whether they're health care or AIDS or economic problems or how to deal with defense reductions by putting people to work, not throwing them into the streets. We believe in can-do government, working in partnership with people. We are tired of being told that Americans can't do things. It's time to bring can-do back to the White House and back to the country.
Clinton is scheduled for an appearance in Cheyenne, Wyoming within the hour. Ross Perot is sticking with his unconventional campaign style. He's had no public appearances since Monday, the day of the final debate. But he'll be popping up in millions of living rooms this week. The independent presidential candidate has plans to broadcast one 30-minute commercial a day for 3 days beginning tomorrow. So far, Perot has run such commercials 4 times. The AC Nielsen company says they've been getting very high ratings. Perot's aides promise their candidate plans to hit the campaign trail soon.
A new report on police handling of the Los Angeles riots singles out former Chief Daryl Gates for most of the blame. Striking back, Gates says those responsible for the findings are liars. The riots broke out last April after a jury acquitted 4 white LA police in the Rodney King beating. Today's report says that in the months before the violence, the LA city government was like a dysfunctional family, unprepared to deal with trouble. The report was prepared at the request of LA's Civilian Police Commission. Former FBI and CIA Director William Webster and former Newark, New Jersey Police Chief Hubert Williams headed the investigation. Their volunteer group faults Gates for not having a meaningful plan to control the riots and for not taking personal command. Mayor Tom Bradley came in for criticism, too. He's also accused of failing to develop a crisis plan. Among the other findings, too many specialized police units. The report recommends re-emphasizing police patrol duties. Another finding, emergency communications were overwhelmed. Recommendation, upgrade LA's 911 system. And the report found LAPD was slow in getting help from other police departments. It says the department should be more willing to ask for help.
Hard times in the airline industry came home to Delta airline pilots today. The Atlanta-based airline has announced it will furlough up to 200 pilots beginning in December. It's the company's first layoff of permanent employees since the mid-1950s. Delta says it has to cut staff because of mounting losses and plans to reduce jet purchases. The airline lost $500 million over the past year, and it's expecting a sizable loss during the latest quarter. But the announcement still came as a shock.
Obviously, we would be disappointed. It is a change. The airline industry is in bad trouble.
Pilots are somewhat surprised by the company's action, disappointed that they would take this action without exploring all alternatives.
As we have done throughout Delta Airlines of recent, in our commitment to return to sustained profitability, we could not justify the retention of these pilots in the short term.
The Delta officials say they hope to recall the pilots eventually, but acknowledge the layoffs are indefinite. Thousands of angry coal workers take to the streets of London. When Early Prime continues, we'll look at why British miners are so angry with the Prime Minister, John Major.
And more than 3 years after the Exxon Valdez oil spill, is Alaska's Prince William Sound still feeling the effects? We'll take a look.
Early Prime is brought to you by Hummer, the world's most serious 4x4. Hummer, the legend grows at a dealer near you.
Born to run, and run, and run. The most serious 4x4 in the world. Hummer. Available now at a dealer near you. The most serious 4x4 in the world? Get real. Hummer. The legend grows.
Every night during trout season, Ed Russell ties some of the best flies ever seen on Pinecrest Lake. But sometimes his arthritis pain can make it tough to sleep. And that's when his wife Ann gives him Tylenol PM. Unlike ordinary pain relievers, it has extra strength Tylenol pain reliever, plus a gentle ingredient to help him sleep, which is good news for Ed, but not for the trout population of Pinecrest Lake. Tylenol PM, it puts arthritis pain to rest.
Where can you use the Players Club card? Las Vegas, Atlantic City, the Caribbean, on cruise ships. Sometimes you just need to get away from it, all right? But these days, you gotta be smart about it. With a Players Club card, you save 50% off your room, 25% off food and drinks, up to 50% off shows. The Players Club card. Have some fun the smart way.
New members get 2 free nights in Las Vegas or Atlantic City when the club books their flights. Call toll-free right now. There's no obligation.
You've read about it, heard about it, seen it on the news. 16-inch ground clearance, 6.2-liter V8 diesel, 4,000-pound payload. The world's most serious 4x4. The toughest off-road vehicle on Earth. No compromises, no excuses, no bull. Hummer. The legend grows.
Tonight, does Clinton have it clinched, or is that just what the media wants you to believe? The press, are they playing fair, or are they playing favorites? Their voice and your vote. In the Crossfire, 7:30 Eastern tonight.
Three terrorist bombs exploded in London this evening. The latest explosion struck in northwest London. It came less than an hour after an explosion ripped through an army center for part-time civilian soldiers, wounding 3 people. Earlier, a bomb exploded on railway tracks in a North London suburb, injuring 3 commuters. The Irish Republican Army claims to have warned officials about the railway bomb earlier in the day. Police won't comment. The Irish Republican Army has launched a wave of attacks in London this month to protest British rule in Northern Ireland.
The last lifeline into Sarajevo has been suspended indefinitely. Today, the United Nations canceled relief flights into the Bosnian capital because of increased fighting near the airport. 2 planes were able to deliver supplies to the capital this morning, but a third was forced to return without landing. The fighting at the airport is believed to be between Serbs and Bosnia's predominantly Muslim army. But there are reports today of the first major clash between the Muslims and their allies, the ethnic Croats. Sarajevo now has less than a week's worth of bread reserves. Last week, all land routes into the city were cut off. Tens of thousands of British coal miners, fearing for their jobs, marched in London today. Bands played as miners and their supporters protested in Hyde Park. They carried signs saying, "Sack Major, not the miners." The protest came as the House of Commons prepares to vote on Prime Minister John Major's controversial plan to close British mines. The proposal would put thousands of miners out of work. At the start of today's debate, the opposition Labour Party presented a motion demanding an independent review of the planned closures.
More than 3.5 years after the Exxon Valdez oil spill, and Prince William Sound in Alaska looks perfectly normal to the outsider. But people living near the site of the nation's worst oil spill say things are not normal and probably never will be. CNN's Sean Calebs has that story in the first installment in his series, Alaska, Wilderness on the Brink.
Life is being renewed along Prince William Sound. You can see it in the water. You can see it on land. Salmon, again, fill the fisherman's net. And the fishermen are filling their holes. To hear Exxon scientists explain it, few would ever know the nation's worst oil spill had fouled this crystal clear water.
If you were to just go out there and look on your own, you probably would not find an indication that there had been 11 million gallons of oil spilled in Prince William Sound. To the casual visitor to Prince William Sound, you would not know that an oil spill has occurred.
Hardly casual visitors. Many folks in the fishing town of Cordova have made a living off the Sound for generations. They know the spill happened. They can never forget.
Since then, we haven't been the sleepy town we were before, but instead, I think we all lost our innocence during the big spill.
R.J. Kopchak was vice mayor of Cordova in 1989 and helped organize the relief effort after the Exxon Valdez ventured too close to Bly Reef. The rocks opened a gash in the supertanker and unleashed a disaster. Kopchak says time has healed many wounds, but not all.
And for the casual observer, yes, the sound looks pretty darn healthy. But if you kick over a rock here or there, if you try to count a pot of killer whales that's no longer around, or if you miss the sound of birds in the morning in that special bay that you used to be in, you know that the sound's a long way from being the same.
When you clean a spill up, you don't just magically bring back sea otters. You don't just magically bring back loons or any other animal that might have been impacted by the spill.
No one knows how many animals died in the thick crude, but the estimates Alaskan and federal wildlife officials came up with are staggering. The spill killed 250,000 seabirds, as many as half the Sound's 10,000 sea otters, and 1/5 of the killer whale population.
I don't think you can overemphasize the fact that the mortality rates we see here, 20%, are 10 times the rates we normally see in undisturbed killer whale pods.
The rich forest land around Prince William Sound was also home to 4,000 bald eagles. Researcher Tim Bowman says oil killed at least 800 of them.
And it looks like the hit it took the year of the spill is probably going to have a short-term effect. It's probably going to stall that population growth for a number of years.
A number of years. A tick of the evolutionary clock that moves oh so slowly for Alaskans eager for the sights and sounds they miss. Remember this? The front line in beach cleanup, part of Exxon's $2.5 billion cleanup. 4 summers have passed since the oil fouled 1,000 miles of Alaska's shoreline.
This is the beach along Sleepy Bay in the southwestern portion of the Sound. It was among the areas hit hardest when the Valdez ran aground. From a distance, it looks as though Exxon's millions helped restore the natural beauty. But if you want to find a lingering testimony to the oil spill, you don't have to look very far. Oil. The familiar rainbow sheen glistens on the rain-covered rocks. Oil. Not hidden beneath the surface, covered by rocks and dirt, but out in the open, gummy and tar-like, daring any vegetation to creep too close.
And I was here in mid-April of '89, and it was probably knee-deep in crude here at that time.
It's common to find Cordova fishermen on the shores of the Sound these days checking conditions. For them, the spill was a violation of sorts that they maintain still haunts Alaska. Robert Clark is an oil spill consultant who has spent 2 years studying the Sound for Exxon.
It is a very rich environment as marine environments go, and it's well on the way to restoring itself back to where it was before. In most cases, I should think it's probably more or less back to where it ever was.
Exxon boasts that man and nature have combined to remove 90% of the oil.
There's not only just real hope for Prince William Sound, but it's now an area where I'm very proud to take people out and show them how nice it looks.
That's been one of probably the most frustrating things since the spill is Exxon is running an intentional campaign to mislead the public and assure people that the Sound is recovering rapidly.
Ricky Ott has fished Prince William Sound for 7 years, an outspoken Exxon critic whose voice has arguably been loudest.
I feel like I'm talking for a lot of people, and I have people stop me on the street and thank me for keeping after them.
Before labeling Ott an environmental extremist, consider this. She has a PhD in marine pollution and has put that to use in the Sound.
It's rebounding, but slowly. It's not going to be instantaneous, and some species are still showing a considerable amount of damage.
Among the problems, Ott contends, once fertile spawning ground for salmon have been poisoned. She says the pink salmon mortality rate has tripled since 1989. Exxon says there are no facts to back up that claim.
We recognize that there are people who are mad at Exxon, and at one point in 1989, I was mad too. I wish we hadn't had that spill. But I feel good about what we've done since then. If you had written the model response for a company like Exxon, I think it would have looked very similar to what we did.
And residents of Cordova say that is precisely part of the problem.
They actually believe that they've done the best they can.
Just like the oil, bitterness remains in Prince William Sound, It's just easier to find.
And tomorrow we'll take a closer look at human suffering in Alaska and report on how residents along Prince William Sound were affected after the Exxon tanker ran aground.
More than 600,000 women will have hysterectomies this year. When we come back, we'll tell you why one cancer specialist recommends that many women take the procedure a step further.
When your sinus and nasal congestion feels this bad, what can you do? Last year, you wanted to call the doctor. Last year, you wanted a prescription. But this year, Tavis D in its full prescription strength is available without a prescription. Just one tablet helps relieve 12 hours worth of painful congestion and sneezing.
Guess what? I'll be there after all.
Tavis D. One tablet, 12 hours, and now no prescription.
30 years ago this week, the world froze on the threshold of nuclear war, the Cuban Missile Crisis. JFK's Defense Secretary, Robert McNamara, on Larry King Live tonight, 9 Eastern on CNN.
For those of you who have been reluctant to wear a hearing aid, Miracle Ear has more great news. If you have trouble hearing in noisy situations, the exciting Miracle Ear Clarifier may be your answer. The Clarifier features a special filter that automatically reduces background noise.
In a restaurant situation, it picks up the noises I want to hear, but the other noises are just moved off into the background.
If you or someone you know thinks they may be suffering from hearing loss, call Miracle Ear at this number and receive helpful information.
It really makes a lot of difference in your way of hearing and in your way of life.
Call this number. Miracle Ear will send you a booklet on better hearing, plus a coupon for a free hearing test. Call today. Learn about all the good news from Miracle Ear.
A lot of people don't even know you got it, especially the one I got, the design that I got.
Call this number. Find out if Miracle Ear can help you.
The first drug approved for relieving prostate enlargement in men may not be as effective as scientists had at first thought. In a study to be released tomorrow, the maker of the drug, Proscar, offers data to back up its claim the medication will help 1/3 of men who suffer an enlarged prostate. But an accompanying editorial in the New England Journal of Medicine raises doubts about that. In the editorial, a urologist at the University of Washington writes that compared with traditional prostate surgery, the drug has limited benefits in small numbers of men. Now, it's important to point out here that many critics of Proscar, the drug, perform the surgery that the drug could replace.
Medical researchers are at odds over what had been considered a good way to reduce the risk of breast cancer, eating less fat and more fiber. A study in the Journal of the American Medical Association finds no evidence to support the low-fat, high-fiber theory. The study tracked nearly 90,000 women over an 8-year period. But doctors with the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine disagree. They say women in the study simply did not cut their fat intake enough. A Chicago cancer specialist says there's a sure way for thousands of women to reduce the risk of another type of cancer. Have their ovaries removed when they have a hysterectomy. CNN medical correspondent Dan Rutz reports.
Hysterectomy is one of the most common operations. The doctor performing this one says many surgeons don't go far enough, that in patients over 40, it makes sense to not only remove the diseased uterus, but also the ovaries, even if they're healthy.
Since hysterectomy is such a common operation with over 600,000 hysterectomies performed a year, and the majority being performed in women who are within a few years of natural menopause, is an opportunity to prevent a large number of ovarian cancer cases by removing ovaries at that time. Everything turned out fine, and we were glad that everything turned out to be benign. I think you made the right decision to have that.
Sandy Whitaker suffered from severe bleeding that made her chronically tired and anemic. The problem could have been solved by removal of her uterus alone, but Whitaker accepted the doctor's advice to have her ovaries removed too.
Well, I knew that I could have my ovaries left in, but I was concerned about ovarian cancer, and I didn't want to have to worry about it.
Although ovarian cancer is relatively rare, it is difficult to diagnose and so is often fatal. By removing ovaries during hysterectomy, the Northwestern University researchers estimate over 1,000 cases could be prevented each year.
The operation is not much more involved. It doesn't cost more. It doesn't take a lot more time in surgery.
There's some controversy surrounding hysterectomy and related operations. Some activists accuse male doctors especially of overly promoting the procedures, the implication being that women's organs are more dispensable than men's. Boyke says his advice to people like Sandy Whitaker is based solely on biological facts that have nothing to do with chauvinism.
While ovarian cancer is a rare cancer, it's usually advanced at the time of diagnosis. Usually 75% of the women are dead at 5 years after diagnosis. Most live 2 or 3 years. We don't have adequate tests to diagnose early ovarian cancer, and we really haven't made a lot of progress in the last 20 years.
He explained all my questions, and the decision was left up to me, and I made the decision that I didn't want to have to worry about it, about ovarian cancer, developing that sometime in the future.
That decision brought an instant and premature menopause, but both doctor and patient attest that hormone replacement therapy works in preventing symptoms and protecting patients against bone thinning and heart disease. Dan Rutz, CNN Medical News, Chicago.
Ooh, darling, I need you so. Never, ever gonna let you go. 'Cause I'm the one for you.
Capture the ones you love without missing out on the fun yourself with a Sony Handycam, America's most popular camcorder.
Every day, the Democrats and Republicans spend $4.5 billion. And what have they bought? Unemployment, bad schools, homelessness, and special privileges for politicians and their friends. There's an old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, it is broke, and time is running out. On November 3rd, vote to fix it. Vote for Andre Maru and Nancy Lord. Vote Libertarian.
Actress Shirley Booth starred in many productions during her long career, but to many, she always will be remembered as Hazel, that meddling maid in that 1960 television sitcom. Shirley Booth has died at her home on Cape Cod at age 94. CNN's Donna Kelly has a look back at the actress's career on the stage and screen.
Hey, Mr. B! Oh, boy, I was scared. I thought he'd gone. I gotta get his measurements.
Not now, Hazel.
Between 1961 and 1966, Shirley Booth starred as Hazel, a maid who gave her boss fits. Lawyer George Baxter, played by Don DeFore, was not the master of his sitcom house, and Hazel was always proven right by the end of the show. Booth played the original Dolly Levi in The Matchmaker, both on Broadway and in the movie.
Oh, hello there. Are all of you people married? That's nice.
Her first film performance was the lonely housewife Lola Delaney in 1952's Come Back Little Sheba, which she had done on Broadway. Acting opposite Burt Lancaster, she displays the talent which won her both a Tony and an Oscar for the role.
Those years have just vanished. Just vanished into thin air. Maybe you're sorry you married me now, Doc. You didn't know I was going to get old and fat and sloppy.
Oh, baby.
Well, it's the truth. That's what I am. But I didn't know it either, Doc. Are you sorry you married me?
Of course not.
I mean, are you sorry you had to marry me?
We were never going to talk about that, baby.
Donna Kelly, CNN reporting.
And that's Early Prime. I'm Lou Waters.
I'm Sharyl Attkisson. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
Take care.
Next on CNN, the streets of Manhattan are filled with cheers as a controversial pop star's records are smashed to smithereens. Also, Madonna has cash registers around the world working overtime today. We'll show you how sex sells. Lauren Sidney and I will have those stories, plus country star George Strait, and a major announcement from radio shock jock Howard Stern. And all that's next on Showbiz Today.
Showbiz Today is next here on CNN. For an update on the day's top stories, you can turn to Headline News. Check local listings for channel number.
Here's who
Crescent, our people make the difference. Friendly professionals ready to help you find the right car, truck, or van at the right price and provide reliable, convenient service after the sale. Crescent Chevrolet GL, downtown for 60 years.
Friendly Crescent Chevrolet.
Presenting Digital Music Express. 30 channels of CD quality music. The music you want to hear when you want to hear it. DMX comes through your TV cable into your tuner and right into your stereo. And you get all 30 channels for a lot less than you ever thought you'd pay for music. If you like music, you're going to love DMX. Digital Music Express. Just call us today.